Coming up next, this was one of my favorite episodes to put together, truly. In music, trends, they come and go. Chart toppers rise and fall. But every once in a while, an artist or band does something that is completely untouchable. Talking about milestones that will never be shattered, like Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak or Cal Ripken's consecutive game streak. Today, we're tipping our hat to the Guinness Book of World Records, and we're going to count down the top 10 greatest music records that will never be broken. From the song that sold a record 33 million copies and was only performed one time when it was recorded, and the artist didn't make a dime off of it, to the album that spent almost 20 years on the charts, to the artist who had 20 number one hits in just 6 years, to the only artist to have a hit song in 7 different decades. These are the most awesome feats in music history ever. Get ready to have your mind blown, coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you remember kicking back and watching Battlestar Galactica back in the day, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the bell so you know when our stuff comes out, to be a part of our Music History Daily, straight from the artists. And also check out our podcast. We got some new stuff going up there on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So the other day, my son walked up to me with a book order from school. He asked if he could order some books. And of course, that took me back to the early 80s when I was doing the same thing with my own dad. He said, "Dad, can I get the Guinness Book of World Records?" The book. It was really cool. My friend has one, and he has all these cool facts like the tallest man and the oldest person to ever live and all this stuff. And I'm like, "Of course, buddy. I used to buy the Guinness Book of World Records every single year. It was like a rite of passage for any child of the 80s, and apparently it still is." So we both got into these long discussions about, the greatest records, and it got me thinking about the greatest records or feats in music history. So I went down a rabbit hole of unbeatable records in music history. So this is my own Guinness Book of World Records, a top 10 of the greatest records in music history that will never be topped. Let's get into it. Coming in at number 10 on my records that will never be broken, I'm going with the most words ever packed into a single hit song. Now, the previous record for this was Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues with 360 words, I believe. And that record stood for over 20 years until REM blew it away with It's the End of the World as We Know It and I Feel Fine, which also happens to be one of the longest song titles ever to be a hit. REM fit 610 words into a hit song in 87. That record stood for 26 years. And then it got obliterated by who else? A rapper. Back in 2013, Eminem released Rap God, a 6-minute lyrical hurricane that nearly tripled REM's count.
Lyrics coming at you with supersonic speed.
It had 1,560 words. Yeah, you heard me right. The lyrics in this one are delivered at warp speed. One stretch of the track even clocks in at 6.46 words per second, another record. And even more impressive, performed live without missing a beat. It was an elite showcase of breath control, pacing, and articulation. The track peaked at number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 and went multi-platinum, and that's what makes this record so untouchable. Rap God combined elite technical skill with some serious commercial success.
Was king of the underground, but I still rap like I'm on my Pharaoh munch grind, so I crunch rhyme.
There have been other high word count songs, but nothing on the level of that precision and popularity. It's even in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Elevating music, you make elevator music. Oh, he's too mainstream. Well, that's what they do when they get jealous, they confuse it.
All right, let's get into number 9. I've got a record that's connected to AC/DC's Back in Black. It's the biggest selling album of all time without a major hit single or even going to number 1 on the album chart. Never happened. In a singles-driven industry, AC/DC did the unthinkable. Back in Black conquered the world. It sold over 50 million copies without a single ever reaching number 1 on the US Hot 100, or even the top 30 for that matter. And get this, none of Back in Black's singles even broke into the top 30. The closest thing to a hit the album cranked out was You Shook Me All Night Long. That one went to number 35. The title track was close. It stalled at number 37. Other singles like Hell's Bells failed to make an appearance in the Hot 100 even. Even on the US mainstream rock chart, it topped out at number 50. Shoot the Thrill got stuck at number 60 on the top tracks chart. And then Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution, that was MIA altogether. Again, like I said, I may have confused it first. AC/DC had this many selling albums, great selling albums, including Back in Black at over 50 million, the biggest selling rock album of all time. And their biggest hit was a top 20 hit. Overall, they've only had one hit. It wasn't even the top 20. It was like number 23. Money Talks. And yet when Back in Black debuted on the US albums chart, it came in at number 4, stayed in the top 10 for about 5 months, again without a hit single. No one could have predicted it would become one of the biggest selling records in history. In America, the album began its march up the ranks by going gold and platinum, and I believe it was October of 1980. By 84, it reached 5 times platinum. By 1990, it had gone diamond, 10 million copies. By 2004, it was 20 million. 2024, it's at 27 million copies sold in the US, and it's just going to keep going. It didn't need a hit single, though. It was the hit. This wasn't about pop appeal. It was about quality, literally and figuratively. AC/DC wrote riffs that could shatter drywall and choruses built for stadiums. Back in Black became essential listening for rock fans of every generation. And unlike many albums that front-load their best material, this one had depth. Even deep cuts like Have a Drink on Me have become classics. It's an album that never really leaves our rotation. The slow build, word-of-mouth, turn-up-the-volume approach of Back in Black was a once-in-a-lifetime feat, and AC/DC stands alone on that one. Coming in at the number 8 spot, I've got the longest charting album on the Billboard 200 in history, tallying 962 weeks or 18 and a half years. Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon, ladies and gentlemen. You know, some albums have a good year. The Dark Side of the Moon, it had a couple of good decades. When Pink Floyd released their 1973 conceptual masterpiece, no one, not even the band, could have predicted its gravitational pull. Dark Side wasn't a singles-driven album either. It wasn't built for popular radio. You know, you think about it. From the first heartbeat of Speak to Me to the final fade out of Eclipse, The Dark Side of the Moon, it tapped into something truly timeless. I mean, we're talking about a concept album with existential lyrics, progressive rock arrangements, and no obvious pop hooks to speak of. And yet it's resonated across generations. And its themes of madness and mortality still feel universal. Even today, it still sounds like nothing else you've ever heard. The flawless production and engineering by Alan Parsons and the seamless flow of the tracks helped turn it into a staple of dorm rooms and record collections and hi-fi demos for decades on end. I mean, The Dark Side of the Moon charted so consistently that for so many years, it was just there, you know, a permanent resident in the Billboard 200. Even after it fell off, it returned again and again thanks to anniversary issues and the ongoing devotion of fans, both old and new, of Pink Floyd. It's a hit. No matter the musical trend or the flash in the pan of the times or whatever happened, it was there. It was more than a snapshot of time. It wasn't. The Dark Side of the Moon is a living, breathing document that continues to gain relevance. I mean, in the streaming age, albums don't chart that way anymore. Let's be serious. The industry machines push music in and out of the public faster and faster. Attention spans are shorter. The music is consumed in fragments instead of a cohesive album. All these things. Albums have taken a permanent backseat to hit songs. And today, deep listening experiences feel like a thing of the past, sadly. There were even rumors, though, that there were multiple vinyl factories that made The Dark Side of the Moon around the clock to meet demand. But first, I want to tell you about the albums that have come the closest to Pink Floyd's mammoth record. And there's nothing that's really close. Bob Marley and the Wailers' Legend, that's racked up over 800 weeks on the Billboard 200. Impressive. But even then, that record's a greatest hits collection. It's not a traditional studio album, not like The Dark Side of the Moon. When it comes to an original album catching up to Dark Side on the charts, the closest studio album is Metallica's self-titled 1991 record, the Black Album. It comes in at 794 weeks, or almost 15 years, which means that Pink Floyd still in a category all its own. So for our lucky number 7 record, I've got the man who recently played to mixed reviews at Glastonbury. What a crazy couple shows that was. Sir Rod Stewart performing the largest concert in history. That number is estimated between 3.5 and 4.2 million people, which is insane. Okay, so here's the story. On New Year's Eve 1994, Rod Stewart took the stage at Copacabana Beach in Rio de Janeiro and stepped straight into the record books. Now, this wasn't a ticketed event. It was a free show, a stage on a beach. It blended holiday celebration with rock spectacle. The logistics, though, were mind-bending. Roads were closed down for miles and miles. The beach overflowed beyond its maximum capacity. The crowd stretched as far as the eye could see and well out of reach of the speakers even. The crowd was a mix of Rod Stewart fans, tourists, locals, and curious onlookers who just wanted to be part of something really massive. A lot of the audience, like I said, couldn't even hear the music, but they were still there for the show, and they were having a great time. The set list included Stewart classics like Maggie May and Tonight's the Night, and there were fireworks going off over the ocean. Oh, Maggie, I couldn't have tried. Tonight's the night. And the finale was timed to coincide with a stroke at midnight. This was perfect storm kind of stuff. Free access, a legendary artist, and one of the most beautiful backdrops in the world. It all added up to a record that is never going to be toppled, I don't think. It's nearly impossible to assemble a gathering of that scale again. Even the biggest stadium tours, like Taylor Swift or U2 or Ed Sheeran today, they played hundreds of thousands, maybe, not millions. So has anybody come close? Actually, the runner-up, Jean-Michel Jarre, a French electronic composer, he drew about 3 million people, just under. A few 100,000 short of the record, depending on what you believe. He performed in Moscow in 1997 for the city's 850th anniversary. Then there's Rolling Stones. In Rio in 2006, they cracked the million mark. But Rod Stewart's Copacabana spectacle holds the record. It was a once-in-a-lifetime convergence, the right artist, the right night, and a city ready to throw the biggest party the world had ever seen. Coming in at the number 6 position on our countdown of records that will never be broken, I got the purple one in his comprehensive work on the song When Doves Cry. This is what it sounds like when doves cry. I mean, Prince, the mad genius that he was, he did everything top to bottom on this thing, 100%. It was a number 1 smash, and that's never happened quite the same since. Now, for clarification, that's Prince singing lead, backing vocals, manning the electric guitar, the synthesizer, the keyboards, the Linn LM1 drum machine, and until it was removed for the final mix, the bass guitar. In all the research I did, no one else has written, sang, played all the instruments, produced, and mixed a number 1 classic on the Hot 100. Prince did it all. Of course he did. He was a genius. Prince dropped When Doves Cry in 1984. It was the lead single from the Purple Rain soundtrack, an iconic track that had no bass line. He just took it out. When Doves Cry shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, it stayed there for 5 weeks, and it became one of the most daring chart toppers of the decade. Now, at the time, Warner Brothers executives were baffled. What? Where's the bass in the song? That's what they said. And the song felt too unorthodox to succeed. But Prince wasn't chasing a formula. He was chasing total vibe. And he got all of it. When Doves Cry blended rock, funk, soul, and synth pop into something that felt completely new and innovative. It was minimalistic and full of fire. And the fact that one guy made all of it start to finish, it's almost incomprehensible by today's standards. I mean, think about it. Most hits today, they're Frankenstein creations. Dozens of writers, sometimes as many as 30. Producers, session players, engineers, all working in pieces, emailing each other back and forth, really barely ever spending time together in the same room. This kind of solo achievement at the top of the charts, it'd be nearly impossible now. Labels rely on teams to sculpt singles that'll fit the streaming algorithm mold. There's nobody like Prince. When Doves Cry was his statement of excellence, complete creative control from start to end by one of the most gifted musicians of the modern era. And it went to number 1. It was the biggest song of the year. Crazy. All right, so halfway through the countdown, at number 5, for the record, I've got to pay tribute to Boston and their self-titled debut album. Now, I'm going to admit up front, this one is very subjective. It's me, and I'm breaking the rules a little bit. I like to do that sometimes, and you can fight me in the comments if you want. But Boston's debut album is a perfect album, maybe the most perfect album ever. It's not even an album, it's a playlist of greatest hits. Every track is a hit that any other band would die for. Well, I'm taking my time. And no one will ever be able to replicate how flawless this debut record was. And even how essential it was to the survival of rock, saving it from disco. And that's the key I'm talking about. It's a debut album. There are other perfect albums out there for sure, but perfect debuts? Not really. There are some that come close, the Cars and Van Halen, but I'm telling you, there are none better than Boston. Released in 1976, Boston's first record was an epic labor of love by the one and only Tom Scholz, the man who really doesn't get the credit he deserves. He really is kind of the Brian Wilson of the 70s. An MIT-trained engineer who recorded most of the albums in his basement studio. The man was an OCD perfectionist. He obsessed over every note, every arrangement, over every aspect of the record. He didn't let a single detail slide, and that precision paid off. Boston became the best-selling debut album of all time, a record that stood for so many years. It eventually moved 17 million copies in the US alone, with the hit potential of More Than a Feeling and Peace of Mind, Foreplay Long Time. So many hits on this thing. You might think that'd be enough. That's just side 1. Flip the record over and you've got even more heavy hitters. You got Smokin', you got Hitch a Ride, one of the greatest ever rock and roll band, Something About You, and finally Let Me Take You Home Tonight. Brad Delp, perfect. He may be the greatest singer of all time. I mean, he's definitely my favorite, up there with Steve Perry and Robert Plant. I mean, this was, for all intents and purposes, a greatest hits album in disguise. Like I said, a greatest hits record that even seasoned bands would have died for, would still die for. Look, in today's market, debut albums don't make the kind of impact Boston's did. It's just pure and simple. Artists often spend years building buzz through singles and social media. Full albums are just a delivery system for 1 or 2 hits. Really, in most cases, it's not about the album anymore at all. Not like it used to be. If you want to go viral, you don't have time to write and record a perfect LP. That kind of first strike is almost impossible in this current era of digital noise. Boston, perfect. The two go together. Heading into the number 4 spot, I got Old Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra, the first and only artist to have a top 100 hit in 7 different decades.
No, I will never start.
Now, Sinatra first hit the charts in 1940 as a teen heartthrob with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, and before that, Harry James. Throughout the rest of the 20th century, the man reinvented himself again and again and again. Crooner, jazz vocalist, movie star, swing band leader, and elder statesman of style.
In learning the blues.
By the time his Christmas song, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, in the early 2000s hit the Hot 100, he became the only artist to have a Hot 100 hit in every decade since the 40s. Now, Frank passed in 1998. He's still having hits from the grave.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
This wasn't a fluke or a technicality. It was sustained relevance across major cultural shifts. He outlasted big band. He adapted to rock and roll. He had a #1 hit in the middle of Beatlemania.
Strangers in the night.
He remained a voice of class and cool through the disco era and beyond. Sinatra's ability to stay current without ever seeming like he was chasing trends, that was part of his magic. I mean, today artists rise fast and burn out even faster. I mean, most of them would be thrilled if they could stay relevant for even 5 years. Sinatra has done it for 5 generations.
Fly me to the moon. Let me play.
The structure of the music business, it shifted so dramatically that even legendary acts struggle to stretch across 2 or 3 decades at most, let alone 7. Forget about it. So who else is close? Well, the King, Elvis Presley. He's done it in 4 decades. Madonna's done it in 4 decades. And of course, the Beatles, I think they've done it in 5. Cher's done it. But Frank Sinatra remains the only artist to do it in 7 consecutive decades. It's an incredible feat of longevity, reinvention, and sheer staying power. All right, for the #3 spot, and this one's a special one, is Sir Elton John with the best-selling physical single of all time. The song? Candle in the Wind 97.
You lived your life like a candle in the wind.
So after the sudden death of Princess Diana on August 31st, 1997, Elton John reworked one of his most beloved ballads into a heartbreaking memorial.
Goodbye, England's rose. May you ever.
Candle in the Wind 1997, rewritten with new lyrics by Bernie Taupin. That was performed live one time at Diana's funeral in Westminster Abbey.
Brings us to tears, all our words cannot express.
But its emotional resonance swept across the globe. The single became a worldwide event with people lining up to buy it like it was the Beatles in 1964. Released just 2 weeks after Diana's passing, the physical CD sold at a rate never seen before or since.
Candles burned out long before.
Moved 33 million copies, making it the best-selling physical single of all time. That's not downloads. It's not streams. I'm talking about actual physical, tangible units bought and paid for by consumers. CDs stacked in stores and in homes.
Your legend ever will.
Candle in the Wind 97 debuted at #1 in over 30 countries and has stayed there for weeks on end. All proceeds went to charity, making it not just a record-breaking single, but one of the most generous hits in history. He didn't make a dime off it.
For our nation's golden child.
The timing was unprecedented. A global mourning, a beloved artist, and a reworked song that felt timeless. Elton John, to his credit, retired the performance after that one appearance. He never played Candle in the Wind 1997 in concert again, choosing instead to preserve it as a one-time tribute.
Without your smile, this torch will always carry.
It was definitely lightning in a bottle, a pop song that doubled as a eulogy. And here's the thing, this record, it can't ever be competed with because physical singles are, for all intents and purposes, extinct.
Fall here along England's greenest hills.
I mean, streaming has taken over, and even the biggest viral hits don't sell in the traditional sense. I mean, a record like this could only happen in a very narrow cultural window when CDs, when the sales of CDs were still booming. And the whole world bought music the same way, at the same time.
Where lives were torn apart.
So who is the closest contender? Well, that would be Bing Crosby's White Christmas. It held the title for decades with 17 million physical singles sold. About half of Candle in the Wind 97. So yeah, in terms of CD or vinyl single sales, Elton John stands alone. So we made it to number 2, the runner-up position, and this one's truly insane. It's the Beatles as the band with the most number 1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100 and the only artist in history to secure every slot of the top 5 on the countdown. Between 64 and 70, the Fab Four rewrote the rules for music on both sides of the Atlantic. But nowhere was the Beatles' chart power more apparent than here in the US. They scored an unprecedented 20 number 1 singles on the Billboard Hot 100. That's 20 songs that didn't just chart, they ruled the country. No other band has come close.
The long and winding road.
And given how fractured music culture is today, no band's ever going to. The streak began with I Want to Hold Your Hand, and it concluded with a double A-side, The Long and Winding Road, and For You Blue.
Girl, for you.
In between all that, the lengthy list includes everything from Can't Buy Me Love to Come Together to Penny Lane. And the crazy thing is that all this happened in a span of 6 years. No extended comebacks, no greatest hits reissues, just one explosive, unrelenting run of creativity.
Money can't buy me love, can't buy me love. Is you got to be free, come together. Penny Lane, there is a barber showing photographs of every.
It aligned perfectly with the rise of modern pop culture. I mean, Beatlemania was a total takeover. Their impact on music and fashion and film, even global politics, was unprecedented. I mean, sure, hitting number 1 is still an honor, but let's be honest, it just doesn't hold the same significance that it used to. The idea of a band scoring 20 number 1 hits back in the day when there was so much competition, when it actually mattered, it's just inconceivable.
Inconceivable! You keep using the word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
The Beatles' chart performance, their sheer dominance, is a moment in history that simply will never be repeated. It just won't. So I'm sure you're thinking, after the Beatles, who's the closest runner-up? Well, the Supremes did have 12 number 1 hits, and the Bee Gees had 9, but technically those are vocal groups, not really bands. As far as solo artists go, there's Mariah Carey with 19, Elvis with 17, Michael Jackson with 13. But going it alone is nowhere near as difficult as scoring number 1 hits in a band. For an actual band to reach 21 number 1 hits today, they'd need unrelenting consistency, massive cultural pull, and perfect timing. In short, they'd have to be the Beatles. There's only one of those. All right, here we are, the number 1 record, and this one, I promise you, will never be broken. It's the best-selling album worldwide of all time, Michael Jackson's Thriller. On the low end, it's estimated the Thrillers sold 75 million albums. On the high end, though, it's like 120 million plus. What's the true number, though? We'll probably never know. But I tell you what we can know for sure is this record is going to be locked in to history forever. All right, so I'm going to try to paint the picture as best I can here. Released in 1982, but really peaking in 1983 into 84, Michael Jackson's Thriller destroyed everything in his path. It was a freight train. It was a Mack truck. It was a steamroller, whatever you want to call it. Everyone else had to get out of the way, and everybody had this album. This beast spent 37 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Not 37 weeks on the Billboard 200, 37 weeks at number 1. Turned out 7 top 10 singles on the Hot 100. It won a then record 8 Grammy Awards. When all the dust cleared, Michael Jackson was the indisputable king of pop, a global icon. He was so calculated and clever. Thriller was a mix of pop, rock, funk, and soul. It was engineered to appeal to everyone, and somehow it exceeded even that. It dominated radio. It dominated MTV. The songs were undeniable. Billie Jean and Beat It went to number 1. Want to Be Starting Something reached number 5. Human Nature, number 7, probably the best song from the album. PYT charted the worst at number 10. And of course, the horror funk title track, complete with Vincent Price's creepy narration, went to number 4. And of course, that was a cultural phenomenon in itself, and it's played every Halloween. Brilliant move by Jackson. But beyond the music, it was the moment, the moonwalk, the red leather jacket, the glove, the 14-minute Thriller music video that became an event in and of itself. The Pepsi commercial where he burned his hair. This album and everything that went with it was unbelievable. It felt like the entire world revolved around Thriller. By the mid-'80s, it had become the best-selling album of all time, and it's never given up that title. I don't care what anybody says. It's a bigger-selling album in America than the Eagles. There's no way. In the album charts for like 30 years, it was in the top 5 pretty much in the catalog album chart. And the Eagles were only in it a couple of times. Anyway, that's a discussion for another time. I love the Eagles, but nobody's ever going to convince me that Eagles' greatest hits has sold more copies in America than Michael Jackson Thriller. I'm sorry, just not. I don't believe it. And if you want me to do an episode on that, I will. I've actually got a lot of evidence that will show that it's just not true. But anyway, we'll get into that. It's miles ahead of most contenders, though. Albums just don't sell like this anymore. Not in physical form, at least. There's no MTV music video monopoly to beam an artist to every household out there. So, I know you're wondering who's the closest. Of course, we've already mentioned a couple of them. That would be AC/DC's Back in Black, sold around 50 million copies. The Dark Side of the Moon is just under 50 million copies. But even if you add those two together, they don't equal the higher projections of what Thriller has sold worldwide. In the end, Thriller, it's untouchable. It's the greatest record ever. I'll argue it was also the biggest year for an artist ever. Nobody was bigger in any other year than MJ was in 83. No one will ever be bigger than him in 83. That's just the way I see even the Beatles. And I'll argue that forever. They may have had a longer cultural appeal, but in 1983, people in Zimbabwe knew who Michael Jackson was. World leaders would go to meet him. I could go on and on forever.
So let me hold you tight and share up, get up, better.
Anyway, those were my records. What do you think? What do you think the records could be broken on here? Let's have a great discussion below about this. What do you think are some other great records? Should we do a sequel to this? It was so much fun doing this. I love this kind of stuff. I'm a Guinness Book of World Records junkie for sure. But let's have a great discussion and talk about our memories below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.